Welcome to T-Smack, home of the T-Smack. May I take your order?
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I am your host, Josh Scar, and joining me, as always, is that noisy, large, cat-like person, Alex. Alex, how you doing? He's scratching out in my basement right now, and he just will not stop trying to sing along to the soundtrack of Wicked.
That is correct, because I feel very wicked. As in, I'm going to go into your bank account and get back 1009 you made me spend on seeing Gladiator 2.
Hey, we double featured, and I gave you the option. And
Uh-huh.
I told you flat out, I already saw a Lego sequel that I didn't want to see this year, and I'm not doing it again. That was Beetlejuice. So you had to go see Gladiator.
I want to know, just before we get into impressions and all that stuff, I'm going to give a shit if it's a spoiler or not. It is a Hollywood movie based off of a play that's based off a book. So therefore, there should be a cameo of the original actors in it. I just need to know, before we go into like yes, no, burnt tire fire, must see the smack ratings, is Kristen Chenoweth in Wicked 1?
And Adina Menzel, yes, both of them make significant appearances, I should say.
Okay, then it's already better than Gladiator 2. All right, cool. Moving on.
Well, because this is a double feature, Alex, that means we had to bring in some extra heavy duty hands
Mm-hmm.
again, because I think the way this ended up working out is you did not double feature, and I
No.
already told you I wasn't double featuring. So
Yep.
who do we know that loves like quadruple features?
Beppo. There is this guy I know from a really rainy place who likes movies and always takes his daughter to them.
Is it
I
me?
think. No, it's a different guy. Because his daughter thanks him for taking her to the movies, unlike yours.
Oh, okay. Antonio, I
Yep,
gotcha.
yep. Antonio, you that?
No, it's Justin from the Movie Wire, because of course it's Justin. Who else would it be? Justin, welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here, and this one is a fantastic lineup. Fantastic, I mean, with one of the movies.
Fantastic in terms of discussion, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that. One is wickedly good, and the other one defies gravity on how bad it is.
It's almost as good as the wordplay that Alphaba has, where everyone says her sister is tragically beautiful, and she says she's beautifully tragic.
I had to dance through life through these movies, and you know what? I saw something bad. I'm going to try and get through the entire soundtrack title while we do Gladiator.
I was about to go something bad. So the Wicked soundtrack has been going on in my household, not the movie soundtrack. They just released that the day before we started recording this. But the Wicked soundtrack has been going hard in my household for the last like month. My oldest, like that has become her entire personality, is she loves Wicked. And so we had to make sure she understood when we went to the movies today that people are not there to see you sing. They're there to watch the movie with you, not watch you.
I don't know about that.
I mean, we do have a pretty great video of her singing "Let It Go" at Disney World, where people were very much in
Aww.
awe of her singing. So that's Disney World. We're out in the open. People are doing whatever they're doing at Disney World. So like, who cares? But in a movie theater, it's a different scenario. So we made sure she understood that, unlike some theater kids that I think Justin encountered.
Good Lord. You know what? There's one thing that makes me ecstatic, that people walk out of a movie and actually hum the music that's not related to Disney. And there's nothing wrong with Disney music. I mean, we hum it, but there's something extra special about coming through a movie experience, singing something that's not Disney. And this one, I was in a rotten mood because I just got off of work going to this Thursday night showing, and of course, I have my dedicated seat that I will defend with a passion. Row E, seat 16. Those of you that want to find me. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, this time I had almost 12 kids behind me And I got there to get my wicked popcorn bucket about 20 to 30 minutes early to make sure I got it because I got screwed out of Beetlejuice. And of course, I sit down to just this row singing Wicked. And I swear to God, for fuck's sake, if I heard this during the movie, I was going to flip because for this, Wicked was my most anticipated movie of the year because I'm a
Mhm.
huge theater guy. I'm a huge Broadway guy. I loved the production. So this, even though the music annoyed me, I can respect that they like the music, but if they did it during my damn screening, I was gonna go ballistic. But they behaved for the most part. And there was
After
only
Justin
one
gave him a little bit
song.
of a dad eye.
Yep, there was one song, Popular, which is my second favorite song of the
Popular.
movie. That one just started humming. And I think that's even more fucking obnoxious is humming and not just going all in. So I just kind of gave the tilt of the head with the eye to the side and I heard a shush. I'm like, damn straight.
Well, we are going to double feature this, like we said.
Uh,
We're going to talk about Gladiator 2 first, and then we will talk about Wicked Part 1, and we'll go more into some of these details as well. But first, we have to hear from our favorite people down in Florida, Josh and Amanda Wilson from the Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast. We'll be right back to talk Gladiator 2.
The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast. You know that family whose house you hung out in when you were a kid? The house was a little loud and chaotic, but always fun, and sometimes felt more home than home. Well, that's us.
We're the Wilsons, and we welcome you into our podcast with silly chat, ridiculous games, and interviews with interesting people.
Like a spin doctor. The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast.
Welcome home.
And we are back. We are here to talk about Gladiator 2, which I have already mentioned a couple times now. I did not bother to going to see.
How dare you?
This movie has been in development hell for forever, and Hollywood finally went, okay, let's just make Gladiator all over again, but with new characters, and just say that previous events happened previously, and we'll tie it up somehow. Justin had a fantastic review of this in the Movie Wire. I strongly recommend you check it out. I believe the day after this episode comes out will also be his Wicked review, unless you're releasing early due to Thanksgiving.
It will be released early. So the new show with a good lineup with Wicked, Paddington in Peru will come out probably either
You
Tuesday or Wednesday.
you've already seen Paddington in Peru? Isn't that supposed
I
to be out in
am
like January?
I got a special screening tonight, so I will be seeing it after this recording.
Holy crap. That's awesome. All right.
Justin?
Well, Alex.
Wait. Hold on, I need to interject. Justin, lean in a little bit. I need you to hear this.
I love
Fuck
that we're
off.
making
How
eye
dare you
contact.
see that? How dare you? Paddington 2 is a perfect movie, basically. And you were seeing Paddington in Peru 6 weeks early?
I lucked out. It was a last minute
How-
gig, and
How
you know
dare
what?
you?
You're not tied to any kind of embargo or anything? That's crazy.
Nope, because I think it's already released in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. So I think reviews are already floating around for it.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, so they're slowly having screenings here and there. So, but this one I'm excited for, and you know what? There's nothing more adorable to end a night with a talking bear that goes to Peru and gets on an adventure in the rainforest with fantastic manners. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think Alex takes a little exception to that as a talking cat man.
I agree.
But Gladiator 2 stormed into theaters this last week domestically. Opened on Friday, November 22nd to $22 million that opening Friday, with pre-sales going in there as well. It currently has an international box office of $131 million. Alex, I will let you take this one away.
I'm going to lay the groundwork of what Gladiator 2 is. A Roman citizen has his wife murdered and is sold into slavery. A gladiator owner sees the rage and power of this person, buys them, and promises them revenge against their enemy, the Roman they blame for their loss. If only they can prevail in the Colosseum. But that means they must first work their way through some lower tier leagues, then into the arena where they unite other gladiators around them to battle and survive. Then their true name / heritage is revealed, and they battle one-on-one with their greatest enemy in the arena. All in an effort to restore Rome to her former glory. Josh, is that Gladiator 1 or 2?
Well, who dies at the end? Does our protagonist die? Does the bad guy die? Do they both die?
We're just going for spoilers. Pedro Pascal dies.
But is he our hero?
Nope. That is Paul Mescal, who is going by Hano, who is actually Lucille's little boy from the first movie.
Lucilla.
Thank you, Lucilla.
And
Yes.
they've also, if I remember from the trailer, because again, I have not seen this movie and I probably will never see this movie. They
Mhm.
retconned it, or she's lying to him that oh geez, what the hell is Russell Crowe's name?
Maximus.
Maximus. How do I forget Maximus? He's the horse in Tangled. um they retconned it, or she's lying to him that Maximus is his father.
Yeah. Yes, they treat that as a very, very dramatic reveal, like an hour 15 into this 2.5 hour
See,
movie.
I don't like that. I know, again,
Yeah.
I haven't seen this. I don't want to really take up too much of Justin's time here, but they make a point of saying that Lucius is 6, and then Maximus says, "My son is also nearly 6." So like he banged Lucilla
Mhm.
shortly before he banged his actual wife, who he seems very devoted to. Like,
Mhm. Yep.
fuck off, Ridley Scott.
Yep. No, I will give this movie a little bit of credit because the opening
I don't
title
think that's
crawl
allowed.
credits. No, the opening title the opening title crawl credits are kind of beautiful. They're basically these anime-esque still frame, slightly moving pictures to recap the first movie. I thought that was quite inspiring, and I actually really enjoyed that. And if that had been the only nod to the first movie, that would have been great. Except Ridley Scott has a fetish, much that he likes to impose upon his people, the viewers, which is I must immediately start and feature wheat being played with in my film, because as soon as that's over, we see Hano's hands dig into wheat and begin to play with the seeds, and then his wife, who the second they introduce his wife, she dies within 20 minutes, goes, "Oh, you should be more gentle with it." I'm like, gentle with what? He is playing with wheat that he's then throwing to chickens, but you're saying he must be gentle. I'm like, gentle with the wheat, gentle with the chickens, a gentle soul. It's beat for beat. And outside of Pedro Pascal's brooding and Connie Nielsen, who I as much momentum as they gave her in the first movie to have agency, they just stripped that away to she's a sad mom. In this one, poor Connie Nielsen. And I will give a second bit of credit to this movie. Denzel Washington walked on set, and I don't know if he had a script or what. He just walked on set and said, "I'm doing my own thing. I know what movie I'm in, and it's not this one." And bless him, every scene he chewed. They even had some weird hard cuts where you could tell he was probably riffing, and the other proper Shakespearean trained actors were slightly aghast at what are you doing, sir? And they just cut away. Because he's doing his own thing. He's like, "This is my costume. I have really huge gaudy rings, and you're draping me in all these layers of clothing and robes that I'm like talking while twirling them around my arms and striding." I'm like, bless you, Denzel. You knew that you were in some other movie, and if Ridley Scott gave you one bit of direction, you said, "No, this is my scene. This is my take, and I'm walking off if you try to get me to do something different."
I got to give credit to the summary that you just did, Alex, because I think I agree with you on some of it. But I think one thing based on your summary is if I close my eyes and just listen to you, you are the chosen one to just read 50 Shades of Grey. Just listening to you talk about playing with seeds, playing with wheat, playing with capes, Denzel Washington's performance, it was making me subtly aroused over here. So I appreciate that. So, but I do agree with a lot that you said. The opening scene did give me hope on where this movie was going to go, because this is what I went into it anticipating, or hoping, I should say. a sequel 24 years later has to have a balance between respect to the original versus the attention span of society today, which is going to be more spectacle. And that's what I kind of anticipated to an extent. But Ridley Scott went and took the opening hook, the grab that really did grab my attention, and then went full on spectacle. And it became so ridiculous to the point that I had to rewatch the original after seeing this one. And the one thing that I really did miss that is unique in its own way that people just undertone it, that the first one was a spectacle, but it was a beautiful spectacle. It was a violent spectacle, but there was a direction to Ridley Scott that really did take its time in between action and story to kind of bring in the audience to a visual poeticness to it. So to really define the character in visuals, this one, you have just ridiculous fights that just feel like it's just overblown Hollywood that we would normally expect here from a filmmaker that has added some uniqueness, has added some more dialogue to the spectacle aspect. And that's where I think I came into it really disappointed. But the one thing I will 110% agree with you on is Denzel Washington. Anytime he is on screen, he is more interesting, more exciting than any of the fights in this movie. I found myself glued to what he was going to do next than an overpowering mutated sharks that go in the Coliseum, the baboons that are hairless or whatever the hell they are. I would rather watch Denzel Washington own the screen, and that's exactly what he does in this movie. He saved this movie from a complete disaster based on his performance, based on his skills. And this is one of those that, dare I say, that you don't want to really improv away from the script, because if I were to see this on paper, this is Gladiator 2. This is an epic period piece. This is something with a respected director. This is something that Denzel Washington took and he actually owned it. So to the point, I wish that he was in the arena running this movie. So I think if it wasn't for Denzel Washington, this movie would have been absolute garbage.
No, I completely agree with you. The Coliseum should be presented, and I love the way that they did some of the fighting, but the first one, there seemed to be more agency to Maximus and more a proper evolution of what he was fighting and why. This one immediately starts off with, you get like a little montage training sequence, and then he's fighting rhinos, and then the next sequence is, all right, we've got the rhinos out of the way. Okay, now we need the baboons. Cool. Which they decided to give them all alopecia, Ridley Scott said, which is kind of interesting, but also makes them look really weird. Which I get that it was an artistic decision, but it's also one that makes that when watching it, I had to go, is this a genetic difference where they bred this? Like, what is the point of this? And then you get the big naval battle with sharks, and there's fire and all this crap, and it's just like it's an escalation that wasn't emotionally earned, because we're supposed to be focusing on Hano and Hano's rage, and that's what Denzel keeps telling him. There's a rage inside of you, and I'm going to use it. And I don't really get that from Hano. Hano doesn't have rage. He has a reluctance that he waits. He's like a fighter who waits until he's beaten the crap out of for a few rounds before he goes, okay, I guess I'll pop off and do something here. And that versus Maximus, whose rage was immediate, that he was just slaughtering people until he was told, dude, you're never going to get to the arena unless you do showmanship, which of course then we get the, are you not entertained? We don't get that from Hano. We don't get the emergent rage of seriousness. And they try to tie some of it a little later in the movie by when his wife was killed, his arrow through the chest, and so he broke off the part that had the quills on it, the fletching, the feathering, and that's completely forgotten until really late into the movie, where all of a sudden he like picks it up and he starts playing with it as he's thinking, and it doesn't really even motivate him to do anything. It's just more like, oh guys, remember I'm sad because of wife, right? I'm gonna play with this. Sad. I'm sad. And there's just that core journey is retreaded immediately, with to significantly diminishing returns. That's the part that gets me, is that even the music, Hans Zimmer didn't come back. Hans Zimmer apparently read the script and was like, I'm good, I don't do sequels. But then you look at his catalog, he does a lot of sequels.
He did most of the Pirates of the Caribbeans, I think, if
Yes.
nothing else.
Yes, indeed, he did.
Or at least three out of the 5.
Yeah. I would also like to give props to Matt Lucas. Matt Lucas is one of my favorite British comedians, and he is the herald of the arena. And he never interacts with anybody in the main cast. It's just always him with a goblet of wine with some people behind him, and he's like, "Today we have fighting here." I'm like, that must have been a great gig. Did you green screen that? Were you at home just getting drunk and you're like, "What's my line, Ridley?" Cool, I'm good. No interaction with Denzel or Connie or Pedro. None. I'm in this box. All right, screw it. I'll get drunk.
Well, and here's the deal with kind of the character development here is because this is all situational based. So they're driving this character based on the situation. We don't really have a moment with Paul Mescal that really just he owns the screen. We are believed of this character. We want to root for this character. I didn't have one moment where I rooted for him. And then towards the end, they try and give this motivational hoorah that we really want to do one last attempt to say, guys, I swear you want to like this character. You want to follow this character. You want to root for this character. It's one last hoorah to get people to like it. And it doesn't work. It's unearned. So all of these are just situational pieces to it. And the problem we have is all these fight scenes, all these ridiculous moments are shoved into the first half of the movie. And then we're left with nothing. And the movie has no dialogue to really drive it, to really make it interesting or believable, or to develop these characters. Even when they try to develop these characters, it's still almost dialogue driven situational. It's almost like it tries to be a soap opera, but it comes across as 90 Day Fiance, where it's just reality TV, and it just isn't bought in. It just feels fake.
Oh, agreed.
So my question comes in for this, where it sounds like not Pedro Pascal, Paul Mescal is pretty much just Gladiator Maximus. Like they don't really flesh him out into anything else, where Maximus is a 3-dimensional character. He's close. He's decided like this is his last battle. He's going to retire, and then he gets this burden thrown on him by Marcus Aurelius that he's going to become the emperor of Rome and make it a republic again. And then he gets betrayed by someone he considered a brother in oh god, what is it? Commodus? Yeah, Commodus, played by Joaquin Phoenix.
Yep.
And like, so there's layers upon layers of like why he would seek revenge and why he would want to take on the government, essentially the emperor, Caesar. And this one, it sounds like they've either just streamlined this or they've like divvied out certain things. So like, where does the like real conflict or fleshing out of this story come from? Like I don't feel like it can really come from Lucius, because he just doesn't seem to have enough motivation beyond I have to fight now because that's what the story says.
Right. No, you're right in that they divvied it out. So the whole I am, must restore the empire, this is my final battle thing, that's Pedro Pascal's character. He's an older general who is working for the twin emperors of Geta and Calicus. And he just conquered Numidia, which is where they pick up as an enslaved Hanno / Lucius. And he comes back and he's like, they give him a triumph, and he goes to the two emperors and he's like, cool, I'm kind of done. I would like to go home and hang out with my wife. And they're like, but there's India and Persia to conquer. You got to go do that for us. Which I will say, that was a cool scene, because not Robert Downey Jr., who is Joseph Quinn, who we saw in Quiet Place 1, who looks even more like Robert Downey Jr. in this movie. He does. He is the quote unquote saner of the two brothers. The other brother's played by Fred Heckinger. He kind of removes a sword to kind of like tap him and bless him, kind of thing. And when Pedro was like, I kind of want to go home and like see my wife, the sword slides up to his neck and kind of pushes in a little bit. and then slides back, and there's this nice little line of weeping blood, and he's wearing this beautiful white ceremonial armor, and it's dripping under it, and he's like, okay, all right, I'm gonna get ready for Persia and India. And then that's where his thing is like, they're psychotic, I don't want to fight for them anymore, we need to restore the Republic. But Lucius / Hano, his entire thing is, I just want to kill Pedro Pascal because I saw in the midst of a wild battle this general shoot an arrow perfectly that hit my wife in the chest and killed her with one shot. Not, mind you, the hundreds of other people that are killed or all the other things that were happening. It's just this one perfect frame where he suddenly emerges and sees his wife fire an arrow shot, and then Pedro Pascal whip around and shoot her back, and it's like, therefore I must kill him. So that's his only motivation. Now, there is some motivation in that Connie Nielsen, when she realizes that she just instinctively knows, because that Hano, when he first goes into the arena, he kneels down and he puts his hands into the arena floor and begins to caress the floor and rub his hands together. And they even flash back to Gladiator.
You get it? We're referencing the thing. You get it?
Yes, there are 3 or 4 flashbacks to the original Gladiator that weren't needed at all, to like showing Maximus in the arena and then Maximus dying at all, to add quote unquote context. And she's like, oh, that gesture, it is him. And yeah, that's where the agency, then she basically tells Pedro, this is my son, he is the true prince of Rome, we can kind of use this. But then you have another layer, which is Denzel Washington using Hano to get closer and closer to the emperors. So there's all these machinations happening, and the only person who has a full story is Denzel, which is fantastic. Denzel's machinations playing out are great. He is eating every piece of scenery possible. He is doing his job of selling his motivations. And when he goes from the gregarious Denzel that we all know and love to a few scenes where he goes full on sinister and reveals his true intentions, they're fantastic. That is a great story to follow. Poor Lucius and Hano, his story, which is Maximus's story, gets split up between 3 different people who really don't have anything to do other than look at each other and go, oh, we're kind of an awkward family.
So Denzel is essentially the Proximo character, but he also is a little bit Lucius in the sense that he has wider aspirations. But
Yeah.
you raised a question about Lucilla and Pedro Pascal kind of plotting together to somehow raise awareness that Lucius is fighting in the Gladiator pit. So do they ever touch on why Maximus's sacrifice and declaration that Rome is to be a republic again, why that never takes place, or why so many years later they're back under the rule of Caesars, or a Caesar, or Caesars in this case?
Not really, other than the 2 psychotic emperors basically at one point tell, and that's another thing that they have over Pedro, is they're like, we have made many accommodations for your wife to still be here and alive, which is another threat from them, is that like, listen, we didn't kill her even though we could have. But they never really do explain like what happened in the last 16 years that nothing changed in Rome. And then everything got worse.
Well, I think when it comes to all these mechanisms trying to play in once, all these arcs trying to get to their climax, it never really works because it's never really interesting. And the fact that I couldn't even connect the dots until I really got to kind of the climax of it, when we have all these stories almost come together in unison with dialogue. And when it takes that long in such a long movie, it really loses the attention span of the audience. This is where the unbalance really happens, is we have spectacle first half, and then we have the dialogue to try and support the fan base of the lore of the first one. And it never really works itself out, because by the end, when we get to that big fight at the end, I don't really care. There is nothing earned here that really wants me to follow these characters except for Denzel Washington. We get our 3 big or 4 big, whatever it may be, animal fights, and then we have this lame fight at the end between Denzel Washington, and we're actually rooting for Denzel Washington because he's the best part of the movie. When it comes to a lot of this, after watching it and putting my review, I looked online to kind of see the viewpoint of this, and people are saying you don't have to see the first one to enjoy this one. Honestly, you almost do to an extent to kind of appreciate it. I think it does add to the value of it, because if you watch this as an individual movie, it doesn't really drive itself. You have to have a kind of a like or love of the first one to see where this story goes. And even at that, it's not a very good follow up. This would have been a very better strategy to focus on the simplistic level. And we've seen this time and time again of just overcomplicating scripts. And it's no surprise with David Scarpa, who did Napoleon, to overcomplicate a subject to the point where nobody really cares or nobody really wants to follow these characters because you don't have a great knowledge of how the material is supposed to go. Is there is no character base to this, and that's where the first movie really did amplify. We did have the spectacle of a character, not a spectacle of a movie. And that's where the entertainment value is really stolen from the viewer.
Yeah, agreed.
So, last question, and maybe the most important question.
Mhm.
Does Jaimin Hinsu survive?
He's not in this.
He's not in this. What kind of bullshit world is this that we live in?
But Peter Mensa is.
I don't know who the fuck that is. He's not Jaimin Hinsu.
He's best known for "This is madness," and then he's kicked into a pit.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I saw him on screen. I went like, because he's kind of the
Does he
leader
get
of the
Spartan
area.
kicked again?
Oh, unfortunately not, but he is in. This moment I saw him, I'm like, hey, this is fantastic. Please tell me you like this. I wanted him to go, "This is Numidia." Also, randomly as well, Rory McCann is in this, but better known for his role on Game of Thrones as the Hound. He apparently was one of the members of the Praetorian Guard, the leader of them. Didn't recognize him at all.
Strange. He's had a weird year. He was also in the Knuckles show that was very bad.
Yeah. And also, unfortunately, removed, but now Ridley Scott is suggesting that there's an extended cut, which he will add back all of her
Of course
scenes.
there is.
May Calamoy, she would be best known as Layla from Moon Knight,
Okay.
Mark's wife,
Yeah.
who becomes the Scarlet Scarab. Yeah, apparently she's when she was announced, she has a very significant role, was going to be integral to the plot, and
And she got cut completely.
yeah, no speaking lines, and is on screen for about 4 seconds, standing behind Denzel in 2 different scenes.
Sounds very integral. So on the Talking
Yep.
Smack scale, I know, Justin, you already gave your rating, which I think you gave it like 1.5 on the Movie Wire, but on the Talking Smack scale, must see or pass?
Pass, 100%. Will not be revisiting.
Alex, how about you? Are you happy you chose this by me telling you have to see this one?
It's a tire fire. I will, however, watch it again because there are certain moments that were enjoyable. Like the spectacle in the arena is gorgeous. I noticed that at the end of the big rhino fight, that as they're discussing whatever happened in the background, there's the rhino, and like a random seagull flies in and lands upon it. And since that's a CGI rhino, someone went, "Let's put a seagull landing on its button there." It is beautiful to see an approximation of what Rome would have looked like. Except Ridley Scott continued the tradition from Gladiator 1, which is Romans are known for their roads and how beautiful and great they are. Rome, the city, has no roads. It's all dirt. And I'm like, why? Why, Ridley? Why?
Because it's swords and sandals. You have to make sure their feet get dirty.
Oh my God. So, all right, Josh.
Well, whenever I see someone less fortunate than Wicked is, and I mean, let's face it, at this point in the year, who isn't less fortunate than Wicked? For my eldest's birthday this year, she really wanted to go see Wicked with a bunch of friends and family. So we corralled up, I think, like 14 people between aunts, uncles, friends, and parents of friends. and we we took up a couple of rows and we went and saw Wicked today. I have been home for like an hour now since we got back from movie and dinner. And I gotta say, we're going full spoilers because, among other things, if you have seen the Broadway show, you have seen this movie. It's just a little bit longer, and it's going to be even longer because part two comes out this time next year. I was so pleasantly, happily, just excitedly surprised at how much I loved this movie.
All right, I'm gone. Screw you.
This is the Hollywood musical I have been asking for. It pays homage. It's the musical. Like, this is the modern day Music Man. Like, the Music Man movie. Alex is taking off his headset and walking away. This is the musical movie of the stage show. There's like, it's padded
hate
out
you.
because they want to do some cinematic stuff, but there's no cynicism to this movie. There is love, respect, practical effects, practical sets. I think there are only like 3 moments in the entire movie where I'm like, that CGI is not great, or like that background is not great. The sets are amazing. The acting is phenomenal. And the performance, like, yes, acting, but like the performances, between the fact that they do the live Les Mis style singing and they touch it up a little bit in post, like you can kind of hear it in the sound mix if you're listening for it. But if you're just engulfed in it, which like most of the people that I'm with don't watch movies the same way I do, they were all like, it sounded fantastic, and they did it live. Like, holy fuck. And I was like, you could kind of hear some things change, but again, you're not listening with the same mentality that I am. Not to say that my mentality is the right one, mind you. I would love to just sit there and enjoy things the way other people do, but that's just not the way my mind is wired. But I was so happy with this movie, and I'm so surprised at how much I loved this movie. I almost cried during Defying Gravity, legitimately. Like, I had to pull back emotions because I'm like, I need to be present with my kids here. But holy shit, is this amazing. Justin, where are you with this?
Hold on, just hold on.
Well, hang on,
Wait,
Alex.
it's just a simple question.
Okay.
Your face is red and pink or green and pink a lot right now too. Like, you
I
are
know.
very in the moment.
You're telling me that the guy who made Step Up 2, Step Up 3D, G.I. Joe Retaliation, and Gem and the Holograms pulled it off?
He sure as fuck did.
All right,
In
Justin, go.
my humble opinion. Justin, how about you?
So this is where I'm going to be neutral, because here's the deal: is Wicked, and I think there will be no debate here that Wicked is one of the most contemporary uh, stage productions that we can see, the most engaging. And I've always said that if you can go to a Broadway show and take 1 to 2 songs out of it that just stay with you, that's a win. And now, there's 2 songs out of Wicked that I can wholeheartedly say that I can listen to over and over again. With that said, I did enjoy it. I did like it. Did I love it? Not to the fullest extent. And here's why. Is I think the integration and the music adaptation of how they transitioned it to cinema, I think the music mix was a little off. At sometimes I saw it in RPX, the instrumental outpowered the vocals. If it wasn't for the choreography, I think that added to some of the fun factor, but I think it took away from the fantastic vocals that we could have heard in a unison. It wasn't until we got to Defying Gravity that I appreciated the cinematic complexities of everything being pulled together from the last moments of the timpani's final booms, that I really did appreciate. But here's where it did lack for me. And again, I'm going to cherry pick this, as all theater nerds will, is the imagination of the set designs, I think, were a little too pushback. And when we get to kind of Oz, and I get it's a prequel where everything seems kind of limp, it seems kind of dry, it seems to have this normality to it, where even the original Wizard of Oz had more imagination to it. And that's where I think the stage production, they could have done a lot more with, because what made the stage production really special is this claustrophobic stage with all these colors, all these vibrant production designs that really got an audience to be engaged in the performances and the action. Now, Is it a horrible movie? No. Is it a great movie? It there it has its moments. It is hard to not fall in love when the songs go in because the choreography, especially when we get to the song Dancing Through Life. Dancing Through Life is the best choreographed song in this
Yeah, and
movie.
it's that way in the stage show too. Like that library set is fantastic for this movie. But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that like even in the stage show, like that's the Newsies performance of the show.
Yeah, that's the King of the New York showstopper that just speaks to the dance moves, not just the vocals. So it does have a lot of issues, but I think that's mostly in just the production design by Nathan Crowley, who really doesn't embrace the stage show what it could be. Does it take away from the engagement? No, it doesn't, but it is noticeable. And when it comes to it reminded me of the producers when the producers I saw in New York with Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick, when it went to a movie, they didn't change anything. It was just a kind of a by shot just remake with just uh, non-fake settings. Here, they had an opportunity to really be visual with it, to really have the imagination aspect to it, to really show what can be done with a movie musical. And this is where I'm really critical with musicals, even though 9 out of 10 times I'm going to like it because it's a musical, is you either love or hate musicals most of the time. And this is an opportunity to really bring in a new generation into theaters to really fall in love with musicals again. This is how the love of cinema really started is with the musical engagement when audio hit screens. And this one, it's died off. So to pique the young imagination, to pique the vocals, to pique the chemistry, to pique the fall in love, we should see that holistically, especially going into a 3-hour movie when people are going to bring kids in. We had some active kids in my theater that were just getting kind of bored, and I think the visual spectacle in this aspect really would have helped. But again, it is hard. My heart got full whenever I would see the chemistry between Glinda and Elvia to really interact with each other. So that's where I think the movie does have some magic to it. But it's just unfortunate when they're not on screen, we don't really see it.
So I'm gonna go back to your first point about the sound design, your theater experience, because I had the inverse. I had the vocals were very loud and like overbearing on the music, but I mean that's kind of why people are there. But we're also running on like a 20-year-old sound system, so maybe the design that they had, like I've run into this issue probably 3 or 4 times now at this point for any non IMAX movie I've seen. So I would maybe recommend checking out a non RTX or RDX, whatever sound system that one was. Maybe finding going to your mom and pop theater if they're showing it, and just if you have the spare 3 hours, going back and seeing if that fixes the audio. Because I wouldn't say the audio was ever a problem, other than when they like one of the things that they were advertising this movie on once they finally revealed in the marketing that it's a musical is that they did the Les Mis style live singing where they had the earpieces in and they just recorded them live and maybe touched up post production on a few things. And there's a couple spots where you can hear like the vocals crank up or change slightly because it's a little cleaner, and you're like, oh, okay, they touched that part up. But again, if you're not listening for it, you can't tell. And I think that's a very big positive for this movie. I will agree that the Oz set feels a little too spread out and like barren because they want to utilize the ensemble a lot. But I would disagree that I think the set design is really on point, especially at the school. It is a little too Hogwarts at times, but it does still kind of have that stage show feel because most of what we see is through Glinda and Alphaba's dorm room, and then there's occasional classroom sets and stuff. But with that all being practical, where if this was any other director or any other movie, they would have just been like, "Here's some blue chairs, here's some blue desks, here's a big blue wall, we're going to green screen the shit out of this and everyone's going to look like they're standing in a blank void and they have nothing to act against." But for whatever reason they got the production budget for this movie to actually build the classrooms, build certain things, and I think it adds just a great layer into the production value and just the immersion of the movie experience. I will say the biggest knock against this movie is that it's probably 20 minutes too long. I think you can easily shave off 20 minutes and it's still as good as it is. And you're still walking away feeling very satisfied with this being part one of part two, even with it being stretched out into from one act of the stage show, with the next act being stretched out probably even further, because I think the second act is only like maybe an hour long, and the stage show is like 2 hours and 45 minutes with a 15-minute intermission built into that 245. So even with all that, I think the way they paced the music, the way Ariana Grande channeled Christian Chenoweth, but also made it her own with Glinda, everything, Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, like she just completely owned it. Like she didn't, I don't know if I wouldn't say she really paid homage to Adina Menzel as Elphaba in this, but I feel like most Elphabas tend to be able to be a little bit more differentiated, whereas Glinda, everyone, you have to be the bubbly airhead, and I think Ariana Grande just knocked it out of the park. The question I was really interested in asking both of you, if Alex, if you had decided to go see this anyway, I'm really curious because this is a part one of part two. Do you think they get any kind of Oscar nomination for leading actress? Like I feel like part two is either going to do a Lord of the Rings where they're going to be like, we'll just give them the nomination next year when the part two comes out and the complete story is told, and maybe they'll win. But knowing what I know about the stage show, the heart of the show is really in this first act, and the rest is kind of the machinations around what pushes them to the conclusion of the show in the second part. So I feel like the performances that they put in, they need to find a way to like co-opt the leading actress, because I feel like it would it's I feel like they deserve some kind of recognition for these performances, because we've seen significantly lesser performances from uh like Reese Witherspoon winning for Walk the Line. If you're an actor and you do a singing role, and you like, it's pretty much a guaranteed nomination is what I'm saying. So I'm curious as to like someone who watches and like prepares for awards season, Justin, how do you feel about these performances, and where do you think it lands them in award season?
So this one's going to be a tough one, especially when it comes to an adaptation from a Broadway show. And this one's going to be a little bit different than an original musical. The performances are good here; they are good. Um, but when we come to standalone performances, this is where it really gets a little tricky, because these two shine when they're together, and rightfully so, because that's what drives this movie. But when we're looking at Best Actress as a standalone, that's where we look at them as individuals. Is they don't have enough dialogue as individuals, because this is a chemistry driven movie, and that's where I think they're really going to look. And to me, that's a shame, because it is
I think
more
that's a fair
challenging.
point.
Yeah, but that is, to an extent, that is a shame, because it's harder to have a performance on an ensemble than to kind of give a driving performance in such a big cast. So I think this one isn't going to have best performance in nomination. Even though I think both did a fantastic job and they were both engaging performances. But the biggest points when I was engaged is when they were together and we were leading up with the anticipation of what's going to happen next with these two, or what the next musical number is going to be. And I think that's going to be in consideration with the Oscars on it, is going to be that mere fact.
Yeah, and that was the other question I had is, do you think again this gets a part one nomination and they give it to them? Because I think this at the very least should be in in consideration for best picture for the year. And again, I maybe next year they get the Return of the King treatment, where in my opinion Fellowship of the Ring should have been the best picture winner, and but they gave it to Return of the King because it's like, yeah, you basically made one long movie and stretched it over 3 years. Here's your best picture award, consider it for all three. Um, but I will say, going back into like the performances, even from the very beginning of the movie, once we get into No One Mourns the Wicked, you can see the difference and like why you would adapt the stage show into a movie, because you can create such subtle performances. Like Ariana Grande, just crushes the pain that she's feeling, that she's announcing that her friend has been killed, and everyone's celebrating and she's trying to put on a happy face, but she knows that that's not it's not a happy moment because she knows the truth of the matter. And it's something that in a stage performance you don't really get because everyone's sitting 40 to 120 feet away, and you just have to do these big theatrical movements, and everything is conveyed through like arms and body motion and voice, that you can't really do a whole lot of face acting. But in this scenario where you can have the camera up close and you can see the tears welling up, the pain in her eyes, how she's hiding everything, so much of that this movie is hidden in those details and the facial performances that you don't get in the stage show, which again I think is something that really plays up to the fact that it justifies what this movie is and why it was made.
I think you make a I'm glad you brought that up because that is a very valid point. And I think when it comes to the first act, the first scene where we're having that introduction is I think you can tell as movies or musicals, they kind of do random shots based on location, timing, or whatever. You can tell that the opening scene was one of the first scenes to be shot because if you look, and this is where you really have to translate stage to screen, where you have to have those elaborate facial expressions, those hand motions, like you brilliantly said, on stage. On screen, you almost have to pull it back because you're sitting up front and center on this huge screen. And I think that's where Ariana Grande struggled a little bit, not for long, but for a little bit, because you can tell there's a little bit of lip syncing in the beginning because it was a little bit
I
off.
think those higher operatic moments, like, yeah, she definitely needed a booth for those.
100%. But you can tell this is the where the talent lies is that they pivoted quickly. After that first scene, I didn't notice anything, and we did see that emotion from it. But here's kind of where I think it's going to lose from the Academy is I don't think they went far enough with the emotion. When we take the characters and their up close shots with uh 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 Jesus Christ. Elphaba, with the tears in her eyes, those are emotional spots, but they're quickly pivoted to kind of more of the spectacle towards the end. The one of my favorite shots of this movie is when she is falling from the rooftop during defying gravity and she's reflecting on on her past and she's seeing her younger selves as she's falling down. I would have loved to see it take more of that time because here's where I really love defying
Well, she only
gravity.
has so far to fall.
100%. But this is where Defying Gravity and the adaptation, the interpretation of the song that we can tell went more for cinematic pleasure than it did for
Mhm.
stage is it did take its time. It's a longer song than it was on the stage show because it took its time. It's okay to take your time during this to reflect on the 2 hours and 30 minutes at this point of what's happening to really engage us in this emotion. And I think that's where they kind of almost missed it a little bit, even though it's my favorite shot. I think they could have gone a little bit further with it on the emotion aspect of it. Because I was in tears during this song because I was so happy but terrified that they were going to ruin this song. But they actually amplified it based on who's watching it on the big screen. They made it Hollywood, and I won't say this a lot of the times, but they made it Hollywood, but in a good way. They really did take this song and adjust it towards the audience. But that one scene, I wish it would have gone further because I really wanted more from it.
I think a little bit after what you're talking about is probably one of the more egregious moments that I would cut, because for me, at least from the stage show, especially going into this film, the moment where she starts trying to get all of the Osgards to focus the attack and the attention on her when they're going after Glinda. Um, it's me. So if you care to find me, all that, like, they paced that out too far from the fall, because that is her moment. That's where she rises. And I like the fall. I like her having to come to terms with who she is. It's when she kind of gets control of her power seemingly. She gets the broom back after the fall and she goes. But then we like cut back to Shiz and we hear the announcement that she's the Wicked Witch of the West now and all this stuff. And then she goes back and has like a quick little powwow with herself, and we get a little bit more unlimited. And then it goes into it's me, if you care to find me, which is like the power part of that song. That's the part everyone, like every person trying to get on Broadway, that's the song that they sing. That's the part of the song they sing. And I think they paced that part out too much to build it. And it's still very powerful. But as someone who's waiting for that moment, I'm like, get there already. It's too much. It's a little too long. So I think that if I have any criticism, it's you can easily shave off, like I said, like 20 minutes. And I think the pacing for Defying Gravity up to that point is done really well, but then that part is just like, okay, get there. We know what's happening. We know we're closing in on the end of this part. Get there. Let's wrap this up, because when the movie stops singing, it does feel very long.
Yeah, and I think the pacing on it, and I agree, and I think the movie could have been a little bit shorter, or I should let me clarify. I think utilization of where the time is spent should have been a lot clearer because we even have kind of towards the second act where we get that pivot where she's learning her power. She's trying to move this coin, and nothing really happens except for another outburst. And then we kind of skip forward to no real other power other than you're off to see the wizard. So there's no real rhyme or reason of her going there. She hasn't had that character arc of her powers yet. So I think that was a little miss on the utilization of time. I think we spend a lot more time on the protection of the animals, which I can understand since she was raised by a bear, the emotional aspect of it. But I think the messaging isn't really solid here. And I know I'm nitpicking a lot on a movie that I am going to give a great review to and I love. Um, so it's the intent of what it's trying to do. Did it deliver the emotional message, the first impression of what you felt going to the stage play? It doesn't. But with such an important brand, of such an important stage show, this I don't think could have gotten better when it comes to how it was executed because expectations are high for anybody that sees this stage show. And I think it did respect to the material and translated that to screen in a perfect way. I'm not going to say perfect way, in a respectable way, because not gonna lie, it was perfect timing. I walk out of a Thursday showing and the soundtrack at 9:40 at night is already there. So I listened to the soundtrack and I appreciated it more. Just like a lot of people that go to
Mhm.
Broadway shows, is you don't appreciate the music until you see it on screen on how it's executed in a lot of these Broadway shows. Same goes with this movie. I was unsure of it until I turned on the soundtrack and I ended up loving it, especially the defying gravity piece of it. And I think what really got me was the hold your breath, well, final 10 seconds of the timpani just boom, 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 to be continued. So I think it was a brilliant
Mhm.
way to end it. And I really do hope that they do go a little bit more spectacle in the second half since we're now focused in more of the exciting, grabbing your attention piece of the second and final act of the show.
I am so curious as to how they're going to plan on making. I don't want to say people are going to expect part two to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. I don't think it needs to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think if it's 210 to 205, that is plenty long enough. But I want to know if they're planning on doing like a soft reboot or soft remake of The Wizard of Oz to pad this out. Because like I said, there's not a lot to pad out in the second act. Like minor spoilers for the stage show and next year's movie. Elphaba tries to reconnect with her sister. There's a time jump, and there's still conflict that happens. Nessa Rose doesn't get a whole lot of play in this one, which I think that's maybe intentional. I don't know, but I mean, we obviously know through The Wizard of Oz that something happens where Nessa Rose ends up having a house dropped on her, and the Munchkins are very happy about it. So like the fact that Nessa Rose doesn't get a whole lot of play here, maybe they expand on that a little bit more as well. But where they're going to stretch out the second act, I'm very curious, and my my daughter at least will be able to make Wicked her personality for the next year as well, and while everyone anticipates part two. But I do also want to call out the production design team on this. I don't have their names or anything like that, but the fact that they did the Wicked title card in the Wizard of Oz font, as well as the To Be Continued, I thought was a wonderful touch on top of what was already a wonderful movie going experience. Like it put you in the right frame of mind almost immediately just by seeing that font.
So, I have a question for the both of you.
42.
How, um, if only, how is my man, my hero, my
I was about to bring up Goldblum after I let Justin take his next piece. I was going to get into some Goldblum.
because he is the wizard after all.
He's
what a wonderful wizard he is.
Wonderful. They say he's wonderful. That's a song from the next movie. Sorry.
So I don't know. Here's kind of the first initial vibes I got from Goldblum before seeing the movie. Absolutely perfect casting. I would love to see Goldblum as the wonderful Wizard of Oz. So when he first starts to sing, I had a question mark because I got Pierce Brosnan from Mamma Mia vibes, and it terrified me a little bit, but it matched his personality where he's very subtle, and it matches the wizard where he hides behind this curtain. He's this mysterious man, and it matched the vocal. So I didn't hate it, but he doesn't have enough screen time, and that's kind of where I was a little disappointed, is the final act being stretched a little bit. And I go back into the utilization of how it's used. I think we have so many quick edits with this character on just facial expressions. I think the scenes that he has is brilliant. I think they're great, but we don't get enough dangling carrot to lead us into the next movie with the wizard other than situational. Um, but I did enjoy his on-screen presence, and I still think it's a perfect casting choice if it's utilized properly going into the second movie.
Okay, my next question would be, where the hell do they find an extra hour out of this movie? Because it's longer than the stage play, and in my opinion, this play suffers from what a lot of plays suffer from, which is the good songs, quote unquote, are front loaded. You have Rocky Horror; the majority of those of the quote unquote good songs are in the first act, and then the second act is maybe like 45, 50 minutes. Les Mis, One More Day is the end of the act, and then frankly, I don't give a crap about what the hell happens in the second act. I mean, it does have empty chairs, empty tables. Yeah, empty chairs, empty tables is a beautiful song, but it as well is about a 3:20 maybe, and the second act is about an hour. So what did they pad the first one with that it's longer when you sliced out an hour of it for the
It's a
second
little
act?
more cinematic. They utilize the medium really well. Like I was talking about earlier, they do a lot of close-ups. They use the time to build the characterizations up through pretty much nonverbal storytelling. Because, like I was saying, like uh, the face acting from Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo is fantastic. But they kind of take little interludes in the songs as well to kind of pad out the theme of the moment. And it like saying it doesn't sound extraordinarily great,
No, I
but
don't really want an
it
hour of close-ups. Thank you.
they do a really good job with it, in my opinion. I think what they do to emphasize the feelings of the songs as well as like the themes of the moment, I think they all work really well, and it does play up to a lot of the cinematicness of the film or the stage show being adapted into a film. um but I think it's just that there are some longer lingering shots or flourishes that maybe they could tighten up, because they take the time to flesh out some things that like I haven't seen the stage show since 2017, and some things finally clicked for me because they're able to convey the emotion. They take a moment and a beat to let something resonate, where the stage show moves at a clip, like you don't really have a moment to sit down and be like, oh, the animals are being oppressed, the animals are being uh relegated to uh they're being they're immigrants right now, they're being scapegoated, no pun intended, with one of the professors being a goat. um they're being scapegoated as the reason why Oz and life in the land of Oz sucks right now. And they play a little bit more into those themes and those topics, whereas the stage show goes like, oh hey, Dr. or Professor Dillamond uh was upset, time to go into loathing. Now it's time to show Elphaba and Glinda becoming friends and having good times. We're not going to linger on these themes that are carried over from the book, that we just kind of use as catalysts to move things forward. In this, they let the moments linger and kind of add to what is building up in Elphaba.
Okay. Now you praise the set production. Can you in fact see the masking tape that has been painted on the flats for the backdrops as you can in the original Wizard of Oz now that's restored in 4K?
So you
Because if they
remember
kept that in, that would make me really happy.
so do you remember in Agatha All Along, we praised the
Yes.
moment where she takes the knife and she tears a hole in the set piece
Yeah, she
in the
literally cuts
backdrop.
the backdrop. Yeah, I love that.
The
And she
Wonderful
walks
Wizard
off
of Oz
stage.
does something similar. He just doesn't have a knife.
Okay, that makes me
And
then happy.
they swap him out with they swap out Jeff Goldblum with a body double to do some little dances.
Well, and that might be him. His wife is
I don't
a
think he's
dancer.
quite that limber.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I think when it comes to how long this movie is, and I think they do a great job at this, is they prolong. Again, we do get a little bit more depth when it comes to the animals and all that. The songs are a little bit longer because of they want the visual spectacle of the choreography, but I think they give a lot more hints at when we get our Jonathan Bailey who turns into Scarecrow, our Munchkin character that turns into Tin Man. There's a lot more elongated Easter eggs on what's going to probably come in the second piece of the movie on how that's going to transpire. So I think they spend a little bit more time. And of course, we get our old cast coming back with the vibrato of defying gravity as an Easter egg. So there's a lot of Easter eggs that do prolong this as well to kind of appease not just Wicked fans, but Wizard of Oz fans. And I agree with Josh, is there is a lot of elongated shots here to kind of take in the environment, to kind of take in the scenery. But I think most of the time spent is expanding the emotional stake of how we feel about these animals, and rightfully so, because we get kind of extended scenes of our Wicked Witch being raised by animals. And I think that's where they really want to connect the dots with the audience in a cinematic way to have an impact of memory as we get into the second half. So I think there's a lot of importance with connection to this new audience that have never seen Wicked that they really want to pull into this experience. So I think that's, again, I kind of agree with it, but at the same time, I do think the utilization could have been a little bit different. But I think rightfully so, they were in the right direction of how to execute a new audience.
Like I was saying, I do think you could shave off 20 minutes and you probably would not notice. But once you get into the fun of it and like the musical numbers, you're like you forget about the time until there's another longer sequence between songs. Then you're like, what? When are we singing again? I want to have fun again.
That's going to be the challenge of the second one because all the good songs in most Broadway shows are like we kind of pointed out, are going to be in the first half. So my fear in the second half is that they are going to go all in on spectacle and nostalgic feelings of the Wizard of Oz and kind of not pay attention to the music. And that's my biggest fear with the next one.
I think that's where I feel like they're going to lean more into a soft remake of The Wizard of Oz so they can bring in some of those more nostalgic numbers, because I I agree that like all the bangers are in the first act. You've got Popular, Loathing, and Defying Gravity. Like those are the three that most people will say, "Oh yeah, that's Wicked." But like you have As Long as You're Mine, For Good. Those are two really good songs as well. But a big part of what we were talking about earlier is the chemistry between our two leads, between Elphaba and Glinda. The second act really has them separated for a big chunk of it, and they're dealing with their own problems that leads into what happens going into the song For Good in the finale. And so, like what Justin you're saying, I think that kind of lends credence to what I was thinking about, where they're probably going to work in Somewhere Over the Rainbow. They're going to work in Follow the Yellow Brick Road, just to kind of pad out the runtime and to make sure people are still having a good time.
100% agree. And you know what? If they execute it well, more power to them. They just need to go with the same damn strategy that they did with this one, is make musicals fantastic and memorable again for a theater audience. So, and that has to be the intent going into the second one. And I really hope they stick to it and not just appeasing the spectacle aspect as we saw from the god awful Gladiator.
The last thing I'm going to praise here real quick is we have to call out the choreography again. We talked about Dancing Through Life, but even the choreography for Loathing and Ariana Grande, I don't know if she improved most of her choreography or if it was set up or pre-planned. I don't know, but the popular choreography as well, with her like just scooting along the floor around Elphaba, my kids loved that. The again the choreography for Loathing I thought was really good. Like that was good Hollywood choreography where it felt natural within the setting and the fantasticality of the setting, and no one looked like they were not doing their part. No one looked like they were kind of the best example I could give is Jason Segel in the Muppet movie, where or the Muppets I should say, not the Muppet movie, in the Muppets, where he is surrounded by professional dancers and then he just takes a couple of steps and shimmies and then he just squats while everyone else does the dance. No one took time off in these choreographed numbers. And if you're going to see this movie, you need to see you have to go just to see the Dancing Through Life sequence, because that circular bookshelf sequence alone, if you're prone to motion sickness, maybe take some meds before you go see the movie, because that sequence might give you a little bit of motion sickness, but it's beautiful spectacle. And in the Talking Smack rankings, I will say, Alex, this is a must see. You need to find time to see this, even if I know it's 3 hours. There's no post credit scene, so at least there's that. You don't have to stick through the credits, but you should, in respect to everyone who put their blood, sweat, and tears into the movie, as Justin likes to say.
Well, if at the end of the credits it says "Thank you for taking me to the movies," I'll be happy.
You can queue up a Movie Wire episode.
now, now imagine this, Josh.
Imagine if we were in Seattle with Justin and we could go see Paddington with him.
Yeah.
I think we need to let him go, Alex, because he's got to go see Paddington in Peru.
I know, but just can you just imagine for a moment if we were watching this? It sings Defying Gravity, goes to credits, and then about 3 minutes into the credits, they play the second half of the fucking movie. And that's why it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, because they actually filmed them both at once and we didn't have to go see two
and they
different
just speed ran the second half of the movie during the credits.
That'd be great. I mean, that would make me happy. I mean, God knows Les Mis. Jesus. I don't care about Cosette. Okay, Cosette when she's a little girl, adorable. We have them dancing, singing together. We have her horrible life thing, Fantine and Jean Valjean saying her. Adult Cosette sucks. Okay, I don't care.
But Amanda Seyfried,
Eponine is
so
the one
pretty.
I care about. She can shut up. Eponine's the one you care about. We all know this. Anyway, sorry. I am going to go find time to see this. That actually is the plan, of course. But this weekend, I only had time for one. So maybe next weekend I'll have
We
time
have a
for
What You Doing
second one.
recording coming up, so definitely save those thoughts.
I will.
Well,
Is
Justin,
nobody gonna ask me what my Talking Smack rating is?
I just said, well, Justin, and I was about to say, let everyone know where they can find you, but now I'm going to change my Justin, what is your Talking Smack rating for Wicked Part 1?
No one will mourn the wicked in this. So this one is a must see. It is gonna hopefully bring back people into theater seats for musicals. It's a must see, and I hope this just
You mean
destroys
Joker
Gladiator.
Folie à Deux didn't do that already?
Fuck you, Josh. I hate you.
I love you, Justin.
I love you too.
So yeah, no, I'm more curious to see how strong of legs this has, because I think, especially with Red One being as bad as it is, I haven't seen it, but I've heard Justin's review.
It's like taking a shit in your stocking.
I am very curious if, like, Moana 2, I know that's going to probably do really well in its first weekend. I'm going to try and find time to see it, and we'll talk about it next week if we can. But I legitimately don't know if I have had more fun at a movie than Wicked so far this year. And
Aw.
I think because it does adapt the stage show so faithfully, like I'm pretty sure the script is verbatim from the stage show. Like I said, it's the Music Man. They just took the script and put it on a movie set. And in this case, they took the script of Wicked and put it on a movie set, and they just made it a bit more cinematic.
Fun
So
fact, they actually use the original draft, so there's included dialogue that came from the
Ooh.
original draft of Wicked.
that's an Alex fun fact right there. That's something I know Alex would love.
Yeah, and also I guess we can. This won't get best adapted screenplay because what did they adapt then?
Hey, they
I
had
mean,
some
they-
extended dialogue.
Yeah, they adapted it from
Yeah.
stage to screen.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I mean, what wasn't the plan to get Lin-Manuel Miranda an Oscar by making Hamilton an adapted screenplay by just filming the stage show and putting it in theaters?
And then nobody saw it.
Well, I think Seattle
Well,
has it smart too.
No one had a
because-
chance to. They put it on Disney Plus.
Well, I think Seattle has it smart because we're actually just started Wicked today downtown Seattle on the stage show. So
Nice.
it is brilliant. So we got tickets to that in about a week. So can't wait.
And then
for
your
that.
kids are going to be like, the show is shorter than the movie. Like, I have to wait a year to finish the movie.
Yeah, I can't wait for Brooklyn's commentary on that one.
I would laugh my absolute ass off if they had actually above the theater marquee for Wicked saying, "See the ending to your movie here."
Part 2 playing now.
I'm legitimately shocked they didn't do some kind of teaser for Wicked Part 2, just similar to like Pirates of the Caribbean or The Matrix. I think it was The Matrix Reloaded. They had put the Matrix Revolutions trailer at the end of the credits. So I was kind of hoping they would do that, even though I didn't want to sit through 15 minutes of credits. But overall, I'm very excited for what they will do for Wicked Part 2. So with that, Justin, you said it's a must-see. Let everyone know where they can find you and your podcasts.
You can find me anywhere you listen to podcasts at The Movie Wire. You can follow me on all the socials at Movie Wire Show. You can also check out the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and the Movie Wire crossover show, Back to the Balcony, now playing on YouTube.
And I was on there talking about Star Trek. So, Alex, what do you think where do you think people should go to talk with us about Star Trek?
I think we have a Discord, which is there's a link below. We highly invite you to do there. Because the world is so toxic elsewhere, we're starting to curate all of our movie news and kind of like some of our talk at the Discord. So come see us post about stuff like Idris Elba is going to be in the Masters in the Universe movie.
Man at Arms.
Hell yeah, that's great to hear about. And also occasionally you can see me tagging and worshiping Justin in the Discord, asking him how his day is and what he's had for lunch.
And
I
you can
love
also
it
talk
when
with
you
Matt.
talk to me.
You can talk to me and Matt about comic books as much as you want. You can also find us on all the social media platforms that are relevant at Talking Smack Pod on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Email us your thoughts, questions, reviews. We got, like I said, we have a What You Doing coming up. Let us know what you're doing. Email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for musical themes that you're hearing right now. Alex, who did the remix?
Oh, I did it this week. I put my time and effort in. You know it.
I can
Listen to
tell.
that. Yep.
It's got that Alex effort that you
Mhm.
can just tell.
Yep, and the trumpet right there.
Thank you to Beppo for original avatars, Retro Ale Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. And most importantly, Alex, Justin, thank you for being here. And you, dear listener, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week, and take care. And Justin, you know what to say.
Watch Star Trek.
Who loves T-Smac?
I love T-Smac. Is it true? Mm-hmm. I do. Ooh.